Hi, I'm Kyla Neal, a business coach and mentor from Australia, and I'm a mum of 2.
And I'm Emilia Ottmann, a multi-passionate entrepreneur and a mum of 4. I am from Germany, but I live in Dubai.
In our raw and authentic episodes, we share with you business and personal tips we have learned along the way while starting and growing our global businesses, as well as bringing you inspiring interviews with other mumpreneurs.
This is a podcast from mums for mums.
Welcome to our Mums in Biz podcast.
Welcome to episode number 60 of the Mums in Biz podcast. 60. That's really incredible. And actually, Kyla and I, we should celebrate this. But today I'm not with Kyla, actually. I am alone, or I have a great lady that I'm interviewing. And because the interview is actually quite long, and I could have talked to her for a lot longer, but somebody kept ringing her bell, so it reminded me that I have to stop. I won't talk a lot about the 60. We have to celebrate that another time. And I won't talk a lot about how grateful I am for all of you listening, because we truly are, and we really, really want to thank you. But I really want to jump into the episode basically straight away. But just really quickly, I have a really special guest with me. Her name is Suzanne Roynon, and I've actually met her through a joint authors call of our publisher a few weeks ago. We both have the same publisher for our books. So she's an author as well. And it was really funny because I had to leave a bit earlier because there was something with my kids as well. And then the publisher said, I would really like it if you stay on for the introduction of Suzanne, because I know that you will really like her book. And I was a little bit like, why? And then I listened to her, and she talked about her book, Welcome Home, which is about how your home can really enhance your life. It explains how we can break that mindset to help you lead a more positive and fruitful life. And I was like, okay, how does she know? First of all, how does she know? First of all, I thought maybe it's very similar to my book, because, the theme positivity was similar. But then I thought, then I realized it's a lot about decluttering as well, and living a life with less is more. And I was like, how does she know that I was just decluttering my home? Because actually, just a week earlier, I think it was, I fell into this, I just had enough, and I started decluttering our home, and I threw away and sorted out and gave away, and I was just and I felt so light afterwards, and it felt so good. I mean, to be honest, I'm still decluttering. But those 3 days, and I talked about it with Kyla in the last episode, and she mentioned that she was also decluttering. So it was really funny that we were all decluttering. Okay, maybe it was between Christmas and New Year, and that's the time of year where you do it. But anyway, afterwards, after I did my deep decluttering and the deep dive of those 3 days, I read Suzanne's book. And I thought it was amazing. It helped me to understand a lot more. It's about Feng Shui as well, and a lot more other things and it helped me to understand why I felt so good about the decluttering. So after reading that book, I really thought I have to have Suzanne on the show. First of all, I loved it so much, but secondly, because so many people told me that they were also decluttering their home, but also I think because it's such a relevant topic right now, because we're all at home so much. So I thought it was fascinating, and we talked a lot about that, and with specific examples in the interview now. Suzanne is not only an author, she's also a coach, actually an interiors therapy coach, and she can explain much better what that actually is, and then how she got into that. So without any more words from my side, let's dive into the episode and let's hear Suzanne and what she has to say. Enjoy. So welcome, Suzanne. I'm so happy to have you here with me today. And if you can introduce yourself with your own words, that's always better than me introducing you, and what you do and how you got to what you're doing today, and maybe about your book, You can just tell, us who you are in your own words.
Well, Emilia, it's an absolute joy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm Suzanne Roynon. I'm 50-something and I feel about 40. According to the Daily Mail, I am the UK's leading interiors therapist, and I've got clients around the world, mostly in the UK, America, Australia and New Zealand, basically anywhere that people can understand what I'm saying. So I've got to say, it wasn't always like that. I was married and I was divorced, and then I worked for many years in healthcare and then in charities. But I seem to have always had jobs where I'm helping other people. So ultimately, it's just like, okay, I realised I could make a much more positive difference doing what I love, something that had been my hobby for years. I was making people happier, giving them more fulfilling lives. And I thought, right, I am going to go into interiors therapy full time. And so I did that just over 2 years ago, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's really good to hear. Whenever I interview someone and they say, I'm loving what I do, that's like the best. So what is interior therapy or interiors therapy?
Interiors therapy. So interiors therapy is this dynamic combination of decluttering, life coaching, organising, psychology, a whole lot of common sense, and a sprinkle of Feng Shui. And it started for me over 30 years ago because I developed this interest in Feng Shui. And there was this huge amount of frustration for me because the Feng Shui didn't work and I didn't understand why it wasn't working. And I put all of these cures in and things started to get worse. So it's just like, okay, I've found this solution and it's not working. What's going on? So as time went on, I realised there are a couple of really fundamental things that were missing from my knowledge, my understanding of Feng Shui. And as I gained more knowledge and I put my experience together, then interiors therapy was sort of developing in the background. And so at that point, I was really only using these skills to support my family and friends. But then as time went on, they were getting really successful results and people were starting to notice. So I was seeing, marriages for people who never thought they'd meet the right person, there were children being born against all the odds, and happier homes, great jobs, promotions. And, suddenly all of my free time was being spent on helping other people. So I was kind of working during the week, and then by weekends and even in the evenings, people were calling me up or sending me pictures or saying, can you please come and help me? And that would be my weekend gone. But, there came a point when I had to say to myself, look, enough's enough, Suzanne, you've got to do one thing or the other. And people always assumed that it was just about clutter. But the thing is, interiors therapy goes so much deeper than clutter, and that's why it's different to your basic decluttering and the organising, because it's looking at all of your possessions, the art, the decorations, even sometimes the colours we use, because all of those things have an impact on their owners, and it's unique to every home. It can be really revealing.
Okay, there's a lot of questions I have now, and obviously And obviously, I want to talk to you about Feng Shui and what it actually is. But let's talk about decluttering first, because obviously for me, how I found you and basically how, I was decluttering. I said in the intro that I started decluttering. I mean, I think my house is not like full of clutter, and I'm always quite a tidy person, but still one day there was enough and I started decluttering, and I had just like 3 days in a row I was decluttering the house, but also like my phone, all the photos, like my emails on my computer, I was deleting and like everything. So why in your eyes, and it felt so like freeing, I felt so free and so light, and it felt so good. So why is decluttering and this concept of less is more so important for our daily lives, and that we keep on decluttering as well, I would say?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Decluttering is so liberating. It's absolutely incredible. You feel lighter, you feel brighter. And it's relevant on so many levels. And I think during lockdown, it's been really much, much more obvious for people that they are surrounding themselves by stuff that they don't need. And, the four walls of home have either been a sanctuary, if you live a fairly clutter-free life, or perhaps a prison, depending on your perspective. So just from a practical point of view, the more clutter you own, the less space there is for oxygen for you to breathe. So there's just one tiny bit of logic. And I'm in the UK right now. It's freezing cold outside. You don't want to be having the windows open to freshen up the air. So you live in this kind of stuffy little box. But clutter makes your rooms feel stuffy and stagnant. And then even with air conditioning, there's a heaviness around all of those unused possessions that you've got. So basically, clutter's limiting you, the most basic human need, which is oxygen. But then there are the psychological pressures too. And that's because we keep things we don't need for 5 key reasons. There's habit, fear, guilt, confusion, and then sadly, spite. And none of those are going to inspire a positive mindset for you. So if you've got something that you're seeing every day that's triggering one of those thoughts or a negative thought of any kind, then it's putting you in a place that really you don't need to be.
And what would you recommend? I mean, in your book, you write about the process, how you go about decluttering. Obviously, if somebody hires you, you come in the house, and I assume it's like a one-day thing. I don't know, but that's how I understood it from the book. But in your book, you write about a process and how to go about it, really. So if somebody has never decluttered or never done it, what would you say? How can someone start? And how can someone decide this is to go and this is to keep or to donate or to throw or give away, whatever?
There's definitely a process. And I have 3 key questions that I ask. So do you need it? Do you love it? And do you use it? So if something doesn't meet any of those criteria, then potentially it's taking space that you could have and used for yourself. So when we've gone through that, then another question to ask is, how is this serving me? Because you might choose to keep something that you think you might need. But actually, when you take a step back, when you detach from all of the excuses that you're making to yourself as reasons to keep it, and actually think about how it's going to add value to your life, you might well say, actually, take something like, one of the favourite things I find still in the back of so many kitchen cupboards, still in its box, probably from 10 or 15 years ago, is a pasta maker. They've gone out, they've seen Nigella on the telly, they want to make their own pasta, they go and buy a pasta maker. And they try it once, and it's such a pain to make it all happen and then to clean it all afterwards. So they think, well, it's easier actually just to go and buy a packet of pasta. So the pasta maker goes into the back of the cupboard. Now, going on those, do you need it? Do you use it? Do you love it? They might say, oh, yes, of course, I need a pasta maker. But then when you go to the how does this serve me, and they go, oh, well, actually, it's not serving me at all, then it's easier to get rid of it. But of course, what I want to say is it's really important that you only declutter items which belong to you and are your responsibility. Don't ever be tempted to deal with somebody else's stuff without their explicit permission, because that is the route to all sorts of disasters.
Even your kids, yeah?
I think with children, there's a balance. So if they're very young, you know what they're playing with. You know what they need, what they've outgrown. That's fine. But I think once a child gets to the point of having their own thoughts and perspective, which I would say, depending on the child, starts from about 4.5, they will also know what they like and what they don't like. And you can then gauge it. But I got to admit, there were times when my daughter was small that there were toys that I knew she wasn't playing with, that if I'd asked her about, she'd have clung to tightly and reassured me that it was the thing she loved most in the world. But actually, I knew that she didn't. And just to emphasise that I don't just chuck out everything when she stops playing with it. I think she must have been about 22 before we finally sent her collection of Beanie Babies on its way. And I do happen to know she's still got 2 Beanie Babies in her room. She's 27. So, you know, you've got to judge the child and where they're at, but in saying, you know, don't chuck away stuff that belongs to somebody else. It's more talking about other adults, grown-up children, husbands, partners, even parents. You know, I think with multi-generational houses now, there are lots more people who are just finding that other people's stuff gravitates into their space, and it's very tempting to just say, well, I don't want it, let's get rid of it. To me, that is an absolute no. You do not do that. You might return it to their space, but you do not ever dispose of something without somebody else's express permission if they're an adult.
But saying that if it's like another, you know, household member, and they constantly leave their stuff lying around in the living room, which is like a common area. So and it annoys you. What do you do then? You keep on tidying up after them, like your kids? That's also...
Well, yeah. For me with interiors therapy, everything has its own place where it lives. So, okay, so let's talk about car keys as an example, because quite often they get just put down wherever, don't they? And I realise that's not the level of stuff you might be talking about, but I can use it as an example. So if you know that there is a specific place in your home where the car keys live, then you train the other members of the house to put the car keys there. So every time they say to you, where are my car keys? You don't say, well, where did you put them? Which is obviously the most woman's answer to a partner, because of course we know everything. They say, well, where do they live? And then gradually they get the habit of, right, okay, car keys live in that place. So, yeah, there are cunning things you can do if, you know, iPads or phones are constantly being abandoned in a place that is shared space. You know, put them out of the way. And so somebody actually has to say, well, where are they? And you say, well, where do they live? And then gradually they get the hang of it. I think I got to say, I am very, very blessed, because my daughter's grown up with this way of being, and she knows how well it works for her. She knows that even if she got up in the middle of the night and didn't put a light on, she could find whatever she wanted in the house in pitch black, because she knows exactly where to put her hands on it. That's the ideal thing. When my partner came into our lives, the deal was, yes, you can come into our lives, but when your stuff starts arriving, it has a place where it lives, because I am not going to be responsible for your lost invoices, you know, the book you're reading, those bits of paper. They all live in a particular place. That's where you'll find them. And so, yeah, it is about setting some boundaries, I suppose. It's like anything. You set your boundaries and you maintain them for yourself. You teach by example.
Like anything. And that is why I guess it's easier to teach your kids than your husband or your parents.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
or your parents. It is very, very interesting, though, that as you start changing the way you think and the way you do, people, not just in your home, it's really quite peculiar, but people who might be miles and miles away, even in another country, will message you and say, oh, I've just started sorting out my paperwork, or I'm just dealing with the garage, you know, something like that. It's like the energy shifts around you. And what happens quite frequently when I'm working with clients in their own homes, when I'm able to do that, is we'll be working on their stuff, because that's what we do. But then you'll find the kids or the teenagers will turn up and say, oh, actually, Mum, I don't think I need this anymore. Or can the lady please come and help me with my bedroom too? You know? So that way we work through what's going on, because you're shifting the energy in the home. Now, I realise that might sound a little bit woo-woo, to some people, but we're all energy. Whatever you're looking at, the table you're looking at, the chair you're sitting in, it's just stable energy. And when you shift the energy around in your home, you start to feel better or you start to feel worse, depending on how you're doing it. So the more cluttered you get, the worse it feels. The lighter your energy in your home feels, the better you are.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I totally get about the decluttering and the feeling lighter. The rest, I'm still working on, because but I do agree. But then I thought it's just because I'm talking about it. When I started telling people that I was decluttering, so many people came to me, oh yeah, I was just decluttering, or I also used the time between Christmas and New Year to declutter. And so many people said, oh yeah, you inspired me. So it was interesting. It was really interesting how all this feedback that came.
It is fascinating, and I love it. I mean, my mum called me the other day and said, darling, I've got 8 bags of shredding. I said, well, where's that come from? Well, I decided it was time to sort out my paperwork. Yeah. And it's just like, oh my goodness, we've been doing quite a bit here because we're in the run-up to Chinese New Year, and it's traditionally when a lot of the Feng Shui remedies are sort of reviewed and cleansed and all of those things. And so just as we're starting to build up in our home, then people we know are calling up and saying, oh, you'll never guess what. And it's great. I love it.
Yeah. A few practical questions. So one, like from, out of my own interest, one was like when you talked about the process of how to look at things. And I told you that I was decluttering for like 3 days, and actually I'm still decluttering like 3 days straight, and I'm still like working through the house because I still have a few cupboards that have, and you were saying, you used the word, you're feeble decluttering. So how, when you look at these things, I mean, how can you do this in like one day? Honestly, when you think about everything, like, is it serving me,
Yeah, so you asked
it has to be really quick. I mean,
yeah, you asked how I work with people in their own homes, and people will normally have me in at least 2 or 3 times over a period of time. But what we'll do normally is we'll start in their bedroom, because for the majority of women, actually, and guys too, the wardrobe is a really easy win, because when you open the doors of your wardrobe, you know that there is stuff in there that when you look at it, it brings you down in some way. Now, it might remind you of an argument you had with your partner, or a day when somebody was rude to you, or a particularly bad day at work. You know it. You can look at it and think, every time I take that out of the wardrobe, that's going to bring me down just a little bit. So what we do is we'll use the, do you use it? Do you need it? Do you love it? And then add in, what emotion do you feel when you look at this? And then, of course, we can add in, does it still fit? And what state is it in? Because, I think there are a lot of people, especially when money's tight, who will keep clothes that have really gone past their usable best, but they'll keep them regardless. That's a lack mentality. We talked about fear, the reasons for keeping stuff. That comes in under fear. They're afraid to let it go. And yet every time they put, say it's a jumper that's gone really bobbly or something, every time they put that on, they feel really quite disappointed in themselves, because they're wearing this tatty old sweater that doesn't make them feel good. Do you see what I mean? So basically, that's where we start. We're actually sort of building the decluttering muscle with the wardrobe. Now, once you've done that, it's an awful lot easier than to go around the rest of the home and just say, yeah, yes, oh, no, not interested in that. We don't normally get to sentimental items unless we happen to discover them in the wardrobe, which is actually, people do hide sentimental items in the wardrobe quite a bit. So if we come across one, the client might be so fine-tuned now, having done the wardrobe, that they'll just say, actually, I know that belonged to such and such a person and I really cared about them, but whenever I see it, it makes me sad. So they'll almost ask me for permission to let it go. And I'll say what I say about everything. The decision is yours. If you choose to let that go, that's fine. But if you want to keep it a little longer, keep it for another 6 weeks, another 6 months, see how you feel, that's fine too. And so I suppose it is about giving somebody permission to look at an item differently, and that then allows them to let it go.
Once I heard about this concept of always having, I can't remember whether it was 2 or 3 boxes in your wardrobe of something, like you put it in and you think, like you see, like you keep it in the box for 3 months and then you see whether you will use it again or not. And if you don't use it again, then you will.
Yeah, the boxes in the wardrobe thing, I think is quite interesting because, as I say, you'll normally get quite a clear reaction to the majority of stuff in the wardrobe. So if you were then just if you knew you didn't really want it, but you then pop it in a box and just leave it there, I think that's stagnating you and the energy, because you've always got the opportunity to go backwards. We don't want to be going backwards. We want to be moving forwards. I could absolutely say, yes, if there's an item that you're really not sure about, perhaps you are actively losing weight and it's that dress that you just need to lose a couple of pounds and it's going to look superb. Absolutely. Pop that in a box. That's fine. But be realistic with yourself. Don't make excuses or try and justify keeping stuff just in case you might decide that you really would be willing to wear that horrible blouse again when you know it makes you feel awful.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's more things like that have been really expensive that you don't want to let go of, but actually you're not wearing it, or you actually really like it and it looks really good on you, but you're still not wearing it. And then I think it's quite sometimes good to see, okay, am I going to wear this in the next 3 months or not?
Those are the challenging things, and those are the ones that if I were working with you, I'd say, okay, put them at the far end of the wardrobe. If you haven't worn them in 6 months, make a decision then. One of the things that always has to come with interiors therapy, and again, this might be different to decluttering or organising, is that I'm absolutely clear that it's your decision whether you want to let something go or not. I might look at it and think, okay, so that's an interesting decision. I worked with, bless her, she was a lady who had some hormonal problems, and she, at the point we were working together, was really quite large, and there wasn't really much sign of this condition balancing itself out. But in her wardrobe, she had dresses from when she was 18 and about a size, well, what would be a size 4 now, a size 0, 0, 0, whatever. And she'd kept them. And every single time she looked at them, she was miserable, because all it did was reinforce that, here she was 18 years later and, so much larger than these little dresses. And it was like almost stabbing herself in the heart whenever she looked at them. But she still wasn't ready to let them go, because she still hoped against everything that one day she might be able to wear them again. And at that point, I said to her, well, okay, that's great. Tell me where you will wear those, because these are obviously dresses aimed at, a very, very slim, sexy 18-year-old. Now that you are well into your 30s, do you think you would ever wear a dress like that out somewhere? And it's like the penny dropped, because she was a very elegant lady. She really thought about the way she looked and the way she put her outfits together. And suddenly she knew that no way in the world would she ever be seen out in these slinky little numbers, which had worked so well when she was 18. But even so, she just needed to change her perspective on what they were there for and what she might do with them. So, this is why throughout the book, it's very much a gentling you through. Think about your emotions. How does it make you feel when you look at this? Is it a good feeling? Great, keep it. If you have got the scabbiest, bobbliest pair of whatever, and you love to wear it with all your heart, the thought of coming home on a Friday and just pulling on those sweatpants, despite the stains, despite the bobbles and the fact that the ribbon's gone and you have to hold them up with a hairband, whatever, if you love it, you keep it. Yeah.
Yeah, makes total sense, even though it's hard sometimes, but makes sense. I have another question out of my own interest is, so what about things that from our children that we think our grandkids could use? Because actually both my mom and my husband's mother kept some things, and because we live abroad now, whenever we came home, or whenever we come home, we actually use those things, which were like, towels, bibs, bed linen for kids, a bed, like a baby bed, some clothing, although I have to be honest, we didn't use that, and then also books and toys and a lot. I mean, especially because we live abroad, I guess. But the thing is, now I'm thinking like the wooden train set, that lasts forever. All those kind of things I want to keep now for my grandchildren. And sometimes it sounds a bit strange because especially we don't know where we will move after Dubai or whether we will stay here for a long time. We don't really know. And we don't have a basement or an attic here. So it's really difficult to keep things. But what would you recommend? Because actually it's like worth a lot of money. And I have seen that it was good keeping them.
Yeah, and you're right. Every single home is unique. So if you've got something that you think a future grandchild would truly love and you've got space to keep it, why not? Why not? That being said, I've been working with a lady actually through lockdown she has 4 kids and they're now producing grandchildren. She's got 2 already and another one on the way. And she's so thrilled. She has a basement and an attic and a spare room that had all sorts of bits and pieces for the children. I mean, it's like bars, teddies, dolls' houses. The thing is, the daughter doesn't want her children using the original cot because it's got paint on it that she doesn't like the look of. So the daughter actually just got one of those travel cots for when the babies came. So that was one thing that went. She wasn't remotely interested in the pram or the pushchair. Technology's changed so much. The baby bath, well, she said she didn't need. She would just bath the baby in the sink because it was much more convenient than bending over. And so suddenly all of these precious items, which had actually taken up a good half of the basement, were just being given away or surplus. But of course the problem was they're now 30 years old. People didn't want them. And it was almost a criminal waste of stuff that she could have given away or sold 25, 30 years earlier, and it could have benefited other people, instead of which it was just going to landfill, which, was just awful. But I think as well, as you say, with a wooden train set, does that date? No, it's great. But the fact is that they won't play with it for very long because there are now the iPads and this game and that game. And so suddenly, I think it's lovely if grandparents have a little toy box. But to be perfectly honest, I think you're almost better, especially if you're tight on space, giving the stuff you have now to somebody that will love and use it right now. Don't keep it for 30 years just in case. But if there's something really precious like that train set that's not going to take a huge amount of space, well, box it up and maybe next time you go to your parents, take it with you, get them to store it for you. But, the fact is, it's often more about the attachment that parents have to children's toys than the real benefit to future generations. So maybe just keep a couple of quality items that aren't going to date or overwhelm your space, and then let the rest go to families who can use them and love them right now. Because no matter where you are, there are always people who have less than you, and children who are really quite deprived of things that, you would just leave untouched in an attic or in a cupboard for maybe 30 years. And, your grandchildren might not give a second glance. Let's face it. Do we know what we, when we look back?
Yeah.
I can't think of anything from my childhood that I would have wanted to give to my daughter to play with.
Yeah, I think that train set, they will go, but I have a few other things that I will keep. Yeah.
And also, think back to how your own children played with them. Did they genuinely play with them a lot? Or actually, was it only got out because Granny said, oh, look, here are these trains, let's play with them. And it was kind of, well, okay, we know we want to please you, Granny, so we'll put the iPad down for a moment and go and play with the train set, but then get bored 10 minutes later.
Yeah, okay. One more of my personal questions, and then I want to move on to Feng Shui, actually. What about books? I think books is like a difficult topic for many. I spoke to, like, when I spoke about my decluttering, I spoke to friends about it as well. And everybody, like, books is the thing that people have most difficulty throwing away. But nowadays, even giving away, but because who wants a book now? I mean, people read books on their iPads. The whole concept of, exchanging books is not there anymore, really. We have audiobooks. Plus, like for us here, specifically in this region, I have a lot of German books here that I'd have no idea who to give it to because I'm here. So what would you say about books? And you address that in your book as well. But just, I think it's an interesting topic for everybody.
I just, books, for me growing up, I loved my books. I always had my nose stuck in one. It was just really such a precious way to absorb information. But now I think there's a real sadness about shelves of books which are being kept for the sake of it. Books are knowledge, they're imagination. They're full of desire and they deserve to be read. But, and I would say, you're very enlightened. You will have books that you go back to again and again. And there are others that you bought meaning to read, but you never do. And then there are the ones that you did read, but in reality, you wouldn't choose to open again, but they're still on the shelf because you like me, you have this thing about books having such value. So I think the starting point is to be honest with yourself and actually go through the shelves. And this will normally take 2 or 3 goes, sometimes 4 goes, before you get to the stage where you've only got the books that you love the most. Be honest with yourself and put to one side the ones that are really, really special. So whenever you want that book, you know exactly where to find it. Now with the others, there are still charities that are taking books. There are so many people who don't have access to the technology that we're blessed to be able to use on a daily basis. So books are still of value. So do your research in your local area. Are there charities that are taking on books? And then you can also find that there are sort of book exchanges. Sometimes there are community book exchanges, community centres that will have a library of books that people who don't have access to, them online or to be able to afford to buy them can just go and, swap them out. And I think that's a really, really valuable thing to do. Certainly in this country, Oxfam and some of the other local charities do a huge amount with secondhand books because they are obviously very, very valuable to people who want to read. And that's the thing. It's about finding the value to the person who wants to read them. hospitals, prisons, all sorts of places don't have budgets for books. So, you can give a gift of a book that can open, new perspectives, new lines of vision to so many people. It's amazing. And I just, again, it's like holding on to toys, holding on to books you never plan to read again. I think it's just, a book needs to be read.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and hospitals and prisons is actually a good idea. Yeah, I will look into that as well. So actually, I have one more question that I just remembered. What about if you give something away or you throw something away and then you miss it later on? Has that ever happened? Have you ever heard about that? Or
if I'm honest, nothing I've parted with has caused me regret. Because
maybe you're different. Because
because I'm doing the whole use, need, love criteria before I make any decision. To date, I'm just touching some wood here. No clients have called me up and said they regret getting rid of something either. And I think that's because they're using the interiors therapy process, and that's such a good way of assessing really the relevance of what that has in your life. So, and because we're using the emotions, not just the practicalities, I guess if you know something makes you feel miserable, you're not going to regret getting rid of that, So there was actually one client who spoke to me yesterday. She rang to say she just had the most amazing experience and she was thrilled to bits. And she said, I had a box of stuff that I couldn't take to the charity store because of the lockdown. And somebody gave me some flowers and there was this vase in it. So I thought I'd use it and I got it out and I was really pleased I hadn't taken it to the charity store. And then I put the flowers in it and I looked at that vase and I thought, my husband gave me that vase and I've just finalised my divorce and I don't ever want to see that vase again. And I was right to put it in the box and I wish I'd got it to the charity shop before they closed. So I think, people, even when stuff comes back to them, it'll be a reinforcement that actually it was time to let it go. So, ultimately, I think for all of us, if there was something I wished I'd kept, that's what shops are for. You're not going to get rid of anything that's got sentimental value to you until you are sure it's time to let it go. And for anything else, there's the stores, there's Amazon, it would be very difficult not to find something if you really wanted it.
Okay. And how, going forward, what do you recommend to your clients how to keep on top of things? Like how to not let your house declutter, like become full of clutter again. And it was so nice to read in your book that you had the same thing, that, you moved and then you let your house become full of clutter again.
Yeah. Early on, I got divorced. I moved. My place was beautiful. It was really light and airy, but I convinced myself that I needed all sorts of stuff. And then it got very, very cluttered. And actually, as this whole process has developed, it's happened 2 or 3 times in my life. So I've kind of learned to look out for it now. And the process means it's a lot easier. And, once you get into this lifestyle, before you buy anything, you're thinking about where it's going to be kept, what value it has to you, when you're going to use it. And that saves an awful lot of unnecessary purchases. And it also prevents you from just maybe holding on to things that you would prefer to replace. You'll get the replacement and you'll let the original go. But of course, there are going to be times of the year when things build up. I'm talking about holidays, especially. And, you said yourself, you and your friends all got that urge to declutter between Christmas and New Year in those magical days. Yeah. And, since we've also been working from home, we've had to really think carefully about what's got to be around, why we're keeping it. And that's why going into Feng Shui then helps guide our decisions on what we keep, where we keep it, how we keep it. And interiors therapy does make it an awful lot easier, I have to say.
Yeah, you know what I also did, and I don't know whether that's something you've heard of it, but I also told myself I don't want to buy anything new for 1 month. I was like decluttering. So I always do this. When I want to like create a new habit for myself, I don't use it, don't drink it, don't eat it, whatever, or do it for 1 month. And then I'm sort of creating a habit for myself. So what I told myself, I'm not going to buy anything apart from food for a whole month. We have enough like soaps and, all of that stuff in the house. So even that I'm not buying. And it also made me think about whether I really, really want something. And I don't pick up any unnecessary things at the supermarket because they are just on offer or, So, and actually it's working so far. So let's see. I will tell you later if it's really working later on. But at the moment, I'm still like, we are recording this in January. This will launch in Feb. But at the moment, I'm not buying anything. And it feels really good, actually.
It's an interesting change in perspective, isn't it? And it's not a painful change in perspective.
No.
You're just, you're kind of fine-tuning your mind to say, okay, I'm going to be a little bit more respectful of the money I'm spending because, you can go and just buy stuff for the sake of buying stuff. Or you can say, okay, how am I valuing this? What is it going to give me? And, you might decide that you want to buy the most beautiful plant to put in your home because it will give you pleasure. You can see exactly where it will sit. You might decide to spend a lot of money on it. And at the same time, you won't buy something that's wasteful that you won't use, need or love.
Yeah, I agree. And I will buy a plant actually because of Feng Shui. So what is Feng Shui? What is the concept? How can we make it work for our homes? Tell us about it.
Okay, well, I think probably most people listening have got an overview or an opinion of what Feng Shui is. And I'll just do it in as simple terms as I can because it's a science aside from anything else. And who wants to be bored by science? But so Feng Shui is the ancient Chinese art of placement, and it's been used around China and the Far East for around about 5,000 years. So this isn't new by any stretch of the imagination. And essentially, boiling it down, it allocates 9 specific areas of a building to particular aspirations in life. And in modern times, the best way to describe those are broadly wealth, relationships, reputation, family, health, new beginnings, knowledge, career, and helpful people. So basically, if you turn it into Maslow, it's everything you need for Maslow. So if you imagine a tic-tac-toe grid placed over the floor plan of your home, then it can start to make sense. So essentially, you can improve any area of your life that you feel is lacking by reviewing what's in the space and then adding enhancements which support or are beneficial to your aspirations. But it's this really big subject, okay?
Yeah, I know.
And everybody's home and everybody's Feng Shui are individual to them. So it's quite difficult to generalize. And to add into the mix, there are 2 very definite branches of Feng Shui. There's the traditional Chinese version, which involves using the compass and defining your areas by compass direction. And then there is the Western version, which is a lot simpler. It's what I primarily use with my clients. And that uses the position of the main entrance to the building as the base for the grid. And in the majority of cases, Western Feng Shui works really, really well. And you can see that working because you can, say, tweak the wealth area and almost immediately some money or some prosperity and some other form of abundance comes in. So you know that you're fine working on Western Feng Shui. Some places it's not so easy. Apartments especially. When you and I have chatted before, I actually checked in with you. Do you live in a home or in an apartment? because basically you want the energy to find its way to your front door. If you live in a house, it's very easy for the energy to find your front door. If you live in an apartment where it's got to come in through one door, then a lobby, then another door, then an elevator, and then a corridor, then, you know, sometimes we would, in that situation, then use Western Feng Shui with compass directions just to reinforce it. But yeah, so it's a complex thing which I try and make a lot more simple in the book, primarily because it's just so difficult to explain in a way that makes sense to everybody just in words.
It is super. I think you did a really, really great job in the book explaining it, and even now as well, because it's easier obviously when you see the grid in front of you, because in the book you have a few drawings of the grid of Feng Shui, and I actually took like a screenshot because I was reading it on my phone, and then I referred back to it. But maybe you can give us an example. I mean, I loved all your examples in the book, and they were a lot about finding love and finding a partner, a life partner. Maybe you can give us that example, or you can tell the listeners my example with the wealth, which is behind me. Because it makes it always easier to understand.
Yeah, so there are a few reasons that people normally call me in. One of those is often about a relationship, because, you know, you get these amazing, successful people and they're doing so well in every area of their life, but their relationship is elusive and they don't meet the right people, or, you know, they're, for all sorts of reasons, the relationships that they do have, the people they date aren't right for them, and they don't understand why. And it always comes back to their home, without a doubt. But one of my favourite stories is of a client, and she was a lady, and she, over the years, had developed this really distressing medical condition called vulvodynia. And, you know, if you've never heard of it, great, because you do not want it. Basically, it meant that having any form of a physical relationship with a guy was really painful. And, you know, she is the most amazing, vibrant, bubbly lady, immensely attractive. She's great company, but she had been single for years. And in her home was this brass Buddha figure, which had been given to her by her ex. Now, this lady brings me in every year because she wants to keep her energy high, and so she works with me each time. But every year she insisted that this Buddha was going nowhere. Now, she's not Buddhist, so, you know, there's a thing people say that when people's bullshit is going up, my eyebrow lifts, and I would look at this thing and just, you know, my eyebrow would raise and my fingers would itch, but I respected her wish. No, she wasn't going to let it go. So, you know, despite this Buddha, her life improved. She moved off to a new home. She trebled her income. She went traveling the world. Her business was thriving, just no man. So towards the end of 2019, she calls me in tears and says, look, I am sick of being alone. I'm spending another Christmas alone. I don't want this. I hate this awful condition. I'm sick of it. So I just said to her, this actually was, and it's seared on my mind, the 12th of December, she makes this call in the morning. So I said, let the Buddha go. And instead of whinging and saying, no, she said, okay. So she took the Buddha out and she put it in her car because she wasn't quite ready, but she was going to get it out of the house. So that evening, she went out, she met the guy, and they have just celebrated their first anniversary. Yeah, and they're talking about marriage, but their first anniversary together. But the really interesting thing is she had this vulvodynia condition for over 8 years. It's what had finished her previous relationship, and it disappeared.
Wow.
And it was just like, But you see, the thing is, people often choose Buddha as an icon of peace in their home, forgetting that he was celibate, He abandoned his family and he chose to live in poverty. And you see, the other thing is that for a practicing Buddhist, having Buddha anywhere that he might see you naked in the bedroom or the bathroom is incredibly disrespectful. But these days, they're in so many homes because they're fashionable. And I think people underestimate just how much damage those little images are doing. You know, if you're a practicing Buddhist, you have your Buddha in a shrine and you respect and you revere your Buddha. You don't have him in the corner of the bathroom with a couple of pebbles round him and a joss stick and think that that's you getting your dose of spa-like peace.
Interesting. I need to check now if I still have a Buddha, because I know I bought one when I was traveling Asia. But also the fact that her ex-boyfriend gave it to her, right?
Yeah,
that's something you mentioned actually a lot in the book. I mean, you gave a lot of those kind of examples. I also really like that you mentioned that when you are looking for a partner and you have a double bed in the bedroom, but if it's full of clutter and there's no space in your wardrobe for another person, you're not really attracting anybody, because they can't, because of all the stuff in the house, they can't come in, or in the bedroom.
There's no room. There's no room. You actually have to make space in your life for somebody to come into it. And, you know, a lot of the ladies I work with are so immensely successful, and they've got their homes just the way they like it. You know, all of their clothes are spread out across 3 or 4 wardrobes. You know, everything is just so. They've got their stack of books on one side of the bed and they've got their something else on the other side of the bed. You know, if you do invite somebody into your life, where are you going to fit them in? You've actually got to make space for them. And so we do talk quite a bit about that, because, you know, ladies, if you're looking for love, you've got to make room for it. And it's as simple as that. You can't go on filling your home with everything that suits you as a single woman and expect to make space in your life for the right partner.
And is there anything you would say to married women or men, actually, who just like want to improve the marriage?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So, folks, start by decluttering your bedroom. If you've got your fitness equipment, a pile of books by the side of the bed, you know, let's think about stacks of laundry in the corner, a mess, any form of mess. Does that really say to you, I want to inspire love, passion and romance in my bedroom? And I suspect the answer is going to be no.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
So, you know, start treating your bedroom as your love nest, you know, where you go to have that personal, private time for yourself. You know, it's not the place for the dog's bed or the children's toys or anything else that you might be keeping in there that does not relate to your rest, romance and relaxation. So absolutely, you know, if your bedroom has become the place that everything just gets put, well, unput it. Find somewhere else for it, because, you know, look at your bedroom as though you are welcoming in the love of your life. If it does not look as if it's going to welcome that person into your life, then why the heck do you think that your current partner, the person that you have chosen to marry, is going to feel that way? You respect your space to respect your relationship. And I think it's incredibly important. And, you know, whether you are in a relationship or whether you would like a relationship, that space needs to absolutely reflect the person that you choose to be in a relationship.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes total sense, whether you think about Feng Shui or not. I mean, but you also mentioned that we can put like pictures of us, like of like, for example, in my case, me and my husband, in the place of love, right? In the Feng Shui area, the Bagua of love. And actually, I went around the house and checked all the areas and so on. I did it with my kids because obviously they're at home so much now. So I did it with my kids and then we also have an area. There's also an area for travel. which is quite a hidden space in our house. But my son loved it. And then he went about and made like a collage with all the places. He collected all the places that we all want to, like from everybody in the family where they want to travel to. And then he made a collage. And now it's like hanging there in that area, you know. And I loved that you said it doesn't actually need to be visible to anybody. It can be behind a curtain or behind something. Yeah. So I said, you know what, let's just put this collage there. And at the moment we can't travel, but who knows? So we all have
and
our
isn't
little...
it amazing that you've got, you know, the children are involved in that, and you've talked to everybody about where they want to go, and then you've created this collage of, you know, bringing your vision together for where you would like to be. I just think that is incredible. I mean, that's a goosebumpy moment for me.
That's great.
Because you know, you're starting this process with the children really quite young to say, okay, let's create what we want to bring into our lives. And what the Feng Shui will do is help you with that creation process. It enhances it for you. You're absolutely right about putting, if you're in a relationship with somebody, putting a picture of the two of you together and obviously happy together in those spaces related to romance. Now, every room has a space on the Feng Shui Bagua. It's, you know, again, it's complicated, but for the sake of argument, if you're doing the Western Bagua, you look at the position of the doorway into your bedroom and then look to the far right hand corner, and that is your relationship area. Same in any room. That's where you would choose to put a picture of you with your husband. But you don't need to do that in the children's room and in the kitchen and every other room. Just, you know, think about the places where you really want to increase that energy. You might say, for the sake of argument, if you have an office, and sometimes you just need to be reminded that you really do love this guy. And, you know, even if he said he'd look after the kids and then he's disappeared off the face of the earth, leaving you with them, just at the point where you've got something that you have to do, you know, have your picture there to remind you that this is why you love this guy. And so don't ever choose a picture where you're back to back, or you've just had a fight. Because there are lots of people who say to me, oh, well, I've got this picture, but I remember we just had the most incredible fight before that picture was taken. That's not going to do you any favors, because all you remember is the fight, not the beauty of the picture. So it's a good thing to do.
I could talk to you forever. I have like a lot more questions, but we have almost talked for an hour already. So, and I really want to talk to you about your book, obviously, because that's how we met, and I've just finished it and I really, really love it. And whether you are looking for a relationship or not, you can read it. I mean, it is a lot. I mean, the book is a lot about finding a partner, right? It is, but still, I think anybody should read your book, honestly. And I can't hold up a copy because obviously I have it on my phone, but I see that you have it behind you there.
I do.
So tell us about your book. Why did you write it? When did you write it? Anything else if you want. What is it about?
Okay, well, there is quite a bit about relationships in it, purely and simply because the theory as a whole is so big. And yes, it works in any home, wherever you are, whoever you are. There is something that you will take from this book to improve the lifestyle that you have, the situation you're in. But as with anything, a book often has to be tagged to a particular theme. And so that's why ultimately for this particular book, we chose relationships. So actually, I wrote the book this time last year, beginning of 2020. I was in bed with this really weird flu, okay? And I'd never felt so ill in my life. My daughter was abroad, and I had this really strong compulsion to write down the elements of Feng Shui for her, so she would know what to do in her own home. Now, obviously, she's grown up with it, but, there would be bits and pieces that she didn't really know or understand. So I thought, well, if I could share the power of interiors therapy for her, even if I wasn't around to do it in person, it would be written down because I just felt so ill. Anyway, I recovered. Here I am. after about a month. And by that time, it had grown into this book. And it's called Welcome Home, How Stuff Makes or Breaks Your Relationship. It's available on print worldwide. It's from Amazon.com and it's on Kindle, all the e-reader options. And of course, if anyone wants a signed first edition, you can have one from me and you'll find details on my website. But yeah, it kind of grew. And I chatted to somebody I'd met years before who happened to be a publisher, told her what it was about. And she said straight away, I want that book. I want you to give me first refusal on that book. And the rest is history, basically.
Yeah, I love it. And I know that very soon on the 14th of February, right, you are going to have a promotion for the book. So anybody who wants it, or is that not relevant anymore?
That's going to happen. We are looking, I think from the 12th, actually, it will go on as 99p on Kindle. So yes, you'll be able to get your Kindle copy from the 12th, I believe. But look sooner, because you never know how quickly these things are going to come up.
That's true, yeah.
So
and if you're in Dubai, you can still buy the Kindle version from the Amazon.co.uk website, just as a side note.
Fantastic.
I know. Yeah, so thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners? Anything that you want to one tip that you want to tell everybody to do today, to do now? I love to do that, to give somebody something tangible that they can actually start now after listening to this.
Okay, throw me right on the spot. Right. Okay, folks, start at the very beginning. Go and look at your front door, inside and outside, and see how it makes you feel. Is it welcoming when you're approaching it? Is there anything obstructing the path or getting in your way? So we've talked about energy coming into your home. The door is the mouth of your home. It's where all of that good energy comes into your life, and it needs to be able to enter smoothly and really flow freely around your home. So is the entrance neat and tidy? Is it shabby? Is it dusty? Have you got abandoned shoes, toys, trash, junk mail, dead plants? Oh, yes, I can see from your face that's shockingly familiar. You're not alone.
Yeah.
So clean the door inside and out, polish all the metalwork and clean the grime from around the door frame. Oil the hinges make sure it can open fully and quietly. We don't want any squeaky doors. And then look at everything that you've got in the entrance hall. Ask yourself how it makes you feel. Always tap into that emotion. Does it represent the person that you want to be? And if the answer is yes, then you're off to a great start.
Thank you. That was great. And now you saw it on my face. Now I will repair our garden gate, actually. That's why I was doing like this. And you know what? Your book inspired me as well to immediately call help with a few lamps that were not working in our house.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And so the switches are working again. All the lamps are working. And, I have neglected that for years, actually. So I have to admit, because it was something we just got used to it. But then reading your book, I was like, no, you know what? I don't know why, you didn't say that in your book, but I was like, okay, no, I want to repair everything. Everything needs to be right now. So I did that.
Lamps
so
are a really important thing. Yeah, lamps are, if light or lamps have died, if the bulb's gone or if the electricity's not working, that's a sign that you're really depleted, that you're exhausted, that you're not shining your light the way that you could. So yeah, if ever a light bulb goes, I'm thinking, okay, well, where am I feeling depleted in myself? I need to sort that out. But in the meantime, I'm just going to fix this light bulb right now. So yeah, always, always shine your light out.
Love that. Thank you. And lastly, where can our listeners find you? If they want to get in contact with you, or, well, obviously your book is on Amazon, but you have a website and Instagram, Facebook, you have a lot.
Yep. So the first place to look is always www.interiorsTherapy.com. And you've got articles, you can book a consultation. You'll find also the links there for Facebook and Instagram. But if you just put interiors therapy into either, you will find me. And I love connecting with people. I love chatting. And I probably spend more time than I should looking at random pictures that people have sent me asking for a little bit of help. And I'm always happy to give it.
Great. Thank you very much, Suzanne. It was a pleasure having you.
You are abundantly welcome, Emilia. Thank you so much.